Judaism and Vegetarianism. Judaism and Vegetarianism. Richard H. Schwartz, Ph.D. Lantern Books. A division of Booklight Incorporated. 2001. Lantern Books. 1 Union Square West, Suite 201. New York, NY 10003. Copyright symbol Richard Schwartz 2001. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the written permission of Lantern Books. Printed in the United States of America. Library of Congress cataloging in publication data. Schwartz, Richard. Judaism and Vegetarianism / by Richard Schwartz, New and Rev. ed. P. cm. Includes bibliographical references and index. ISBN 1-930051-24-7. 1. Vegetarianism, Religious Aspects, Judaism. 2. Ethics, Jewish. I title. BM 538.V43S38 2001. 296.3693, DC 21. 00-054577. It is to be hoped that this major publication will not only adorn the bookshelf of many a Jewish home, but will also become a guide to an ever-increasing movement of Jews toward vegetarianism, born out of sincere religious conviction rooted in our most sublime teachings. David Rosen, former Chief Rabbi of Ireland. My own view is that a vegetarian diet may in fact hasten the coming of Moshiach, the Messiah. The more we live as if this were the Messianic age, the closer we are to it. Richard Schwartz's Judaism and Vegetarianism is a powerful guide to moving self and society closer to Moshiach. Rabbi Rami Shapiro, author. The Way of Solomon, and founder and director of the Virtual Yeshiva and Simply Jewish. Richard Schwartz is changing the world and I am proud to be his friend. You do not have to be a Jew to read and enjoy Judaism and Vegetarianism. Richard has brilliantly written a most fascinating book, no matter what your religion. I found it to be one of the best books I've ever read. Howard F. Liman, President, EarthSave International, author, Mad Cowboy. Why, I have wondered, are so many Jews today shifting toward a more vegetarian diet? In his scholarly and thoughtful style, Richard Schwartz demonstrates the profound imperatives at the heart of the Jewish faith that lead inexorably in a vegetarian direction. He shows us that to be a mensch today, to be a whole and healthy and fully human being, you have to bring statements of support your food choices into alignment with your ethics, and that means, for anyone who aspires towards peace and compassion, eating a plant-based diet. John Robbins, author, Diet for a New America and the Food Revolution, How Your Diet Can Help Save Your Life and Our World. Thank God, and Professor Richard Schwartz, for a very accurate, very readable, very stirring book. The author's intellectual integrity, moral passion, and simple human warmth help illustrate a hitherto almost unexplored, yet vastly important territory. His Jewish commitments are as profound as his ethical concerns are universal. The work is a challenge to mind and soul, a call to the conscience, and a guide for practical, necessary action. There must be much acclaim for this brave, pioneering, shiningly Humane Achievement. Dr. Andre Unger, Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel, Westwood, New Jersey, former chairman of the Hebraic Studies Department, Rutgers University. Jews like me who have, so far, not become full vegetarians will still, like me, find Schwartz's analysis of the problems of meat eating to be serious. Food not only for thought but for action to eat far less meat. And those who are drawn to explore the deeper meanings of Torah will find Schwartz a good and careful guide in this aspect of Jewish tradition. For us who are all the people of the mouth, whether it is food in or words out, this is an important book. Rabbi Arthur Waskow, author, Down to Earth. Judaism, Food, Money, Sex, and the Rest of Life, God Wrestling, Round 2, and several other books. Search no further. Richard H. Schwartz has covered all the conceivable aspects of non-meat eating and the Jewish religion. Mark Leibson, the vegetarian voice. Schwartz makes his most original contribution by showing that for each of the standard arguments in favor of vegetarianism, there is a specifically Jewish approach which underpins the vegetarian position. The Vegetarian Activist. A brilliant book of outstanding merit, a classic that should find its way into every Jewish bookcase and certainly of interest to all others who love to widen their knowledge of the ancient and compassionate philosophers. Victor Rubin, Jewish vegetarian. This is a convincing, compassionate, and comprehensive argument, marshals overpowering evidence, amply documented. We will be compelled to think most seriously about the issues raised in this provocative book. Harry S. Rigg, the American Rabbi. Professor Schwartz has presented us with impressive material supporting his thesis that a practical, healthy, and Torah way of eating is through vegetarianism. Emuna. Dr. Schwartz's work should find a place in the home library of every thinking individual, religious or not. It should become required reading for excerpts from published reviews of earlier editions, high schools, and certainly in pre-marriage counseling, nutrition for better health. Shirley Mandel, The Jewish Press. By any standard of measurement, this is an extraordinary book. It covers a field never before explained. When you get through its pages, you might shake your head in bewilderment and say, this is all so true, why hasn't it been said before? Health page, Simon Bloom, American Jewish Ledger. It would be hard for anyone ethically sensitive, Jew or non-Jew, to read this book and not take up the vegetarian cause. Paul Peabody. Fellowship of Reconciliation. A titan in its glorification of the Jewish faith and spirit. Rabbi Marcus Kramer, Staten Island Advance Forward. X. Preface to Fur. St. Edition. 11. Preface to Revised Edition. 15. Rabbinic Endorsement. 19. Acknowledgements. Xi. 1. A vegetarian view of the Bible. 1. 2. Sa'al Judaism and Compassion for Animals. 15. 3. Judaism, Vegetarianism, and Health. 41. 4. Judaism, Vegetarianism, and Feeding the Hungry. 61. 5. Judaism, Vegetarianism, and Ecology. 79. 6. Judaism, Vegetarianism, and Peace. 95. 7 Questions and Answers /Jewish.103. 8 Questions and Answers /General. 131. 9 B'tei Avon, Have a Hearty Appetite. 151. 10 Jewish vegetarian groups and activities. 159. 11 biographies of famous Jewish vegetarians. 171. 12 summary. 178. Appendix. 183. Notes. 199. Bibliography. 215. Index. 223. 9. Table of contents. Forward. Turn from evil and do good, says the psalmist. Psalms 34 hours 15 minutes. As Professor Richard Schwartz effectively demonstrates in this excellent book, meat eating today, more than ever before, is harmful in a variety of ways. Conversely, we are able to personally enhance well-being for ourselves, our society, and our environment through maintaining a vegetarian diet. I believe that there are compelling arguments to advocate vegetarianism even in an ideal human society, just as the late Chief Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Kook envisaged the Messianic age as a vegetarian era on the basis of biblical texts. However, I recognize as an Orthodox Jew that these compelling arguments are not conclusive. Nevertheless, under present-day conditions in modern society, involving, on the one hand, so much damage and danger as well as cruelty in the consumption of animals, and, on the other, the possibilities to have a healthy balanced diet without meat, perhaps as never before it is apparent that the consumption of animal flesh has become halakhically unjust, iffiable. Those who seek to live in accordance with the most sublime values of Judaism will find Richard Schwartz's book an inspiration and guide for an authentic modern Jewish life that fulfills the above-mentioned injunction to turn from evil and do that which is good, seek peace and pursue it. Rabbi David Rosen, former Chief Rabbi of Ireland, President for Israel of IJVS, Director of Israel Office of the Anti-Defamation League. X. Judaism and Vegetarianism. Can the two be related? After all, what is a Sisha, Jewish celebration, or holiday dinner? Without gefilte fish, chopped liver, coolant, roast beef, chicken, and chicken soup. And what about passages in the Torah referring to temple sacrifices of animals and the consumption of meat? Because of these factors, this book is the result of a leap of faith, an intuition that a religion that has such powerful teachings about compassion for animals, preserving health, feeding the hungry, helping the poor, and conserving resources must be consistent with vegetarianism. As I probed for appropriate Jewish teachings and concepts, I became increasingly convinced that to be more completely involved with the glorious goals and values of Judaism, one should be a vegetarian. While Judaism emphasizes the prohibition against causing needless suffering for animals, animals are raised for food today. Under cruel conditions, in crowded, confined cells, where they are denied fresh air, exercise, and any natural existence. While Judaism mandates that we be very careful about preserving our health and our lives, animal-centered diets have been linked to heart disease, several forms of cancer, and other degenerative illnesses. While Judaism stresses that we are to share our bread with the hungry, 70% of the grain grown in the United States and over 1/3 of the grain grown worldwide is fed to animals destined for slaughter. As millions of people die annually because of hunger and its effects. While Judaism teaches that the earth is the Lord's and we are partners with God in preserving the world and seeing that the earth's 11 Preface to the first edition. Resources are properly used. A flesh-centered diet requires the wasteful use of food and other resources, and results in much pollution. While Judaism stresses that we must seek and pursue peace and that violence results from unjust conditions, flesh-centered diets, by wasting valuable resources, help to perpetuate the widespread hunger and poverty that eventually lead to instability and war. There are many indications in the Jewish tradition that point toward vegetarianism. The first dietary law, Genesis 1:29, allowed only vegetarian foods. When permission to eat meat was given as a concession to people's weakness, many prohibitions and restrictions were applied to keep alive a sense of reverence for life. After the exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt, a second non-flesh diet was introduced in the form of manna. When the Israelites cried out for meat, God was angry. He finally relented and provided meat, but a plague broke out and many Jews died. According to Rabbi Abraham Kook, the first chief rabbi of pre-state Israel, based on the prophecy of Isaiah, the lion will eat straw like the ox. People will again be vegetarians in the time of the Messiah. Many difficult questions are asked of vegetarians who take the Jewish tradition seriously. These include, don't we have to eat meat on the Sabbath and to celebrate joyous events? Isn't it a sin not to take advantage of pleasurable things like eating meat? Weren't we given dominion over animals? What about sacrificial temple services? These and other questions are considered in this book. There have been several recent examples of increased Jewish interest and involvement in vegetarianism. In this book I cite Jewish vegetarian groups and activities in the United States, Britain, where the Jewish Vegetarian Society has its international headquarters, and Israel. I also include biographies of famous Jewish vegetarians such as Shlomo Goren, the late Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, Franz Kafka, Isaac Bashevis, Singer, and I.L. Peretz. Finally, there is an annotated bibliography with many relevant sources for those who wish more information on such issues as vegetarianism, nutrition, recipes, and ideas relating Judaism and vegetarianism. 12. Judaism and Vegetarianism. Judaism has much to say about solutions to the critical problems that face the world today. This volume attempts to show how vegetarianism is consistent with Jewish ideals and can play a role in reducing global problems such as hunger, pollution, resource depletion, poverty, and violence. This book is only a beginning of the study of an issue that must be considered in depth by the Jewish community. Preface to the first edition. 13y. A new edition of Judaism and Vegetarianism. There are several reasons, never before have the problems and threats related to animal-based diets and agriculture been so urgent. It is becoming increasingly clear that a shift toward vegetarianism is a planetary imperative. The epidemic of degenerative diseases linked to animal-based diets continues to expand. Costs related to treating diseases have been soaring, and these have caused major changes in healthcare systems, with decisions being made often for economic rather than medical reasons. Modern livestock farming is contributing substantially to much environmental damage, including the destruction of tropical rainforests and other habitats, soil erosion and depletion, and air and water pollution. There are frequent media reports of record temperatures, droughts, severe storms, melting of glaciers and polar ice caps, bleaching of coral reefs, and other negative effects of global climate changes. With increasing human population and greater consumption of animal products, some experts on food sustainability are warning of future scarcities. In view of the many negative effects of animal-based diets and agriculture and the Jewish teachings they contradict, it is essential to bring to the attention of the Jewish community the connections between Judaism and vegetarianism. We need to continuously research and discuss these questions, which connect to so many basic Jewish values. While Judaism has very beautiful and powerful teachings about acting with compassion to animals, protecting human health, preserving the environment, conserving resources, sharing with hungry people, and pursuing peace, the realities of animal-based diets and modern intensive. 15. Preface to the Revised Edition. Livestock agriculture are completely contrary to each of these values. Hence, if Jewish teachings are to be taken seriously, it is important that there be a comprehensive discussion of the many moral issues related to current typical Jewish diets, along with appropriate resolutions and actions. Many changes have been made in this new edition, including the following. All material has been carefully reviewed, and revised and updated, where appropriate. Many new developments and much new research on the impacts of animal-centered diets on health and ecology have been added. Major changes in the Jewish vegetarian world, such as the opening of a Jewish vegetarian center in the heart of Jerusalem and recent activities of Jewish vegetarian groups, are discussed. The bibliography has been updated, expanded, and reorganized by subjects. The question and answer section has been expanded from 17 questions in the first edition and 37 in the second edition to 62 in 2 chapters, one on Jewish issues, and one on general issues, in this edition, with the addition of many new questions related to health, the treatment of animals, and some recent vegetarian related issues. Responses to previous questions have also been reviewed and modified for added clarity. In many cases, updated sources and more scholarly authorities have been cited to give greater credibility to the thesis. Topics that are new or discussed in significantly greater detail include global warming, high-protein diets, the heart disease reversal diet of Dean Ornish, MD, the Cornell/China/Oxford study, Grand Prix of Epidemiology. Protein and calcium myths, recent shifts of China to animal-based diets, early puberty among girls due to animal-based diets, questions for respectfully challenging meat-eaters, why I am a vegetarian, a Jewish vegetarian. Resolution, suggestions for couples when one person is vegetarian and one is not, organic vegetarian food, and important internet websites, including some containing vegetarian recipes, restaurants, and cyberstores. 16. Judaism and vegetarianism. There are negative effects, including damage to human health, pollution, the destruction of ecosystems, increased hunger, and the misuse of scarce resources. As with previous editions, it is hoped that the present edition will lead to a long overdue respectful dialogue in the Jewish community and beyond on the many moral issues related to our diets, and that thereby it will help Speed the arrival of that vegetarian time when no one shall hurt nor destroy in all of God's holy mountain. Isaiah 11:9. Preface to the Revised Edition 17. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb yielding seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree that has seed yielding fruit, to you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Congratulations to my esteemed colleague and friend, Professor Richard Schwartz. May GD bless him, for he has worked hard and composed a wonderful work which describes the ideal of vegetarianism and peace of our prophets and sages of Israel as an absolute ideal toward which the laws of our codes of kashrut lead. We look at the vegetarian way of life as a special path of worship and as a step forward toward the great day, i.e., the coming of the Messiah. The day where nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Isaiah 2:4. Bloodshed will cease, and a suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. Isaiah 11:8. D. During the Messianic era, when the lion shall eat straw like the ox. Isaiah 11:7. People will certainly return to the first stage, in the generations of Adam to Noah, before the eating of meat was sanctioned, and the consumption of fruits and vegetables was indeed sufficient. Then there will be total, perfect peace among people as well as between human beings and the animal kingdom. And the calf and the young lion and the fatling shall be together, and a little child shall lead them. Isaiah 11:6. Israel and the rest of the world will be blessed, as our rabbis observed. Peace was the source of blessings which the Almighty gave to Israel. May it be restored in the days to come. Great scholars of Israel, namely the late Chief Rabbi, Harif Abraham, Isaac Cohen Kook, and his outstanding disciple, my own great father, Rabbi David Cohen, the Nazir of Jerusalem, of blessed memory, preached and taught vegetarianism. 19. Rabbinic endorsement. May it be the will of the Almighty that the number of noble souls who make vegetarianism their way of life will increase. Blessed they will be, because they will be observing the dictum of our rabbis, sanctify yourself with that which is permitted unto you. May they abstain from eating the flesh of living animals, and may they be satisfied with the blessings which GD provided the earth, and the work of righteousness shall be peace. Isaiah 32:17. May the knowledge of GD be spread in this way, and may the words of the prophet Malachi be realized. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the El Road. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to their children and the children to their fathers. Malachi 3:24. Rabbi Sheyeshuf Cohen, Ashkenazic Chief Rabbi and Rosh Bet Din, Haifa. Translated from the Hebrew by Atara Perlman. XX Judaism and Vegetarianism. First, I wish to express my thanks to God by reciting the traditional Jewish blessing for when a person reaches a milestone in his or her life, or that of the Jewish people. Blessed are you, Lord, our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive and sustained us and brought us to this season. While a switch toward vegetarianism is both a societal and a Jewish imperative, and it is essential that the issues discussed in his book be put on the Jewish agenda, I recognize my limitations in presenting this information. However, I have been very fortunate to have had input and Suggestions from a wide variety of dedicated, very knowledgeable individuals. The following, in alphabetical order, reviewed the entire final draft of the manuscript and made valuable suggestions. 1. Rabbi Yonasan Gershom, Breslov Chassid, author of Jewish Tales of Reincarnation, Jason Aronson, 1999. He and his wife, Carol Rachel, are ovo-lacto-vegetarians who live on a hobby farm in Minnesota, sharing the land with numerous dogs, cats, geese, chickens, and wildlife that all live to a ripe old age. His practical experience with animals was most appreciated in reviewing the manuscript, as was his help with the section on Chassidism and raising sparks. 2. J. Levine, MD, ophthalmologist with a specialty in medicine, including preventive nutrition, has articles in several professional journals. His first book, The Eye Care Sourcebook, contains much information on the nutrition, prevention and treatment of eye disease. He is beginning work. XZ. Acknowledgements on a nutrition sourcebook. He provided valuable suggestions related to diet and health. 3. Mark Nagurka, Ph.D., MIT Associate Professor of Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His lifelong passion is love of Jews, Judaism, and Israel. Although he resides in Glendale, Wisconsin, his heart and soul are in Jerusalem. 4. Charles Patterson, Ph.D., author of Antisemitism, The Road to the Holocaust and Beyond, and 8 other books. His most recent books are Angel on My Shoulder, From Concentration Camp to Carnegie Hall, and Eternal Treblinka, Our Treatment of Animals and the Holocaust. His experience as a copy editor was very valuable in sharpening my writing. 5. Rabbi David Sears, Breslov Chassid, author of many books, including Compassion for Humanity in the Jewish Tradition, a source book, and The Path of the Baal Shem Tov, Early Chassidic Teachings and Customs. His research for his latest writing project, tentatively titled The Vision of Eden, Animal Welfare and Vegetarianism in Jewish Law and Mysticism, provided valuable sources and concepts that made his review of this book especially valuable. 6. Jonathan Wolfe, his course, Judaism and Vegetarianism at Lincoln Square Synagogue, provided the original impetus for this work. Several sections of this book reflect his ideas and those of his students with whom I have had the pleasure of studying. His thorough review of every edition of this book was extremely valuable. Yosef ben Shlomo HaKohen, a long-time friend, has been a constant source of sensible advice and encouragement, which is much appreciated. He reviewed much of an early draft and suggested additional Judaic sources that have been incorporated into the book. A prime source of ideas and inspiration has been the Jewish Vegetarian, the magazine of the Jewish Vegetarian Society, edited for many years by the late Mr. Philip Pick, the honorary president. Without the existence of this group and its quarterly publication, this project might never have been started. XY Judaism and Vegetarianism. People who made major contributions to specific parts of the book include Emmanuel Goldman, Professor of Microbiology and Molecular Genetics, New Jersey Medical School, University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and Louis Regenstein, author of Replenish the Earth, The Teachings of the World's Religions on Protecting Animals and Nature, America the Poisoned, and the Politics of Extinction, President of the Interfaith Council for the Protection of Animals and Nature in Atlanta. An affiliate of the Humane Society of the United States. I wish to thank John Robbins, author of Diet for a New America and several other books, and founder of EarthSafe, a national group devoted to promoting vegetarianism, for permitting me to see an advance copy of his manuscript, The Food Revolution: How Your Diet Can Help Save Your Life and Our World, which provided valuable information. John is one of my heroes because, as the only son of Irving Robbins, the co-founder of the Baskin-Robbins ice cream empire, he gave up a very lucrative future in order to help educate people about the many negative effects of animal-based diets and agriculture. The excellent work done by Erica Weiberg in designing the cover is most appreciated. Others who reviewed parts of the book and made valuable suggestions or made other significant contributions include Dr. Irv Bloom, President of Israeli Vegetarian Moshav Amirim, Janine Brinsom, Robert Cohen, author of Milk, the Deadly Poison, founder of the Anti-Dairy Coalition, Executive Director, Dairy Education Board, Bruce Friedrich, vegetarian, Coordinator for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Ziv Gelbendorf, neighbor and friend, Aaron Gross, a vegetarian and animal rights activist, Ronald Halwale, MD, practicing physician for 35 years and author of Eat This, Reverend J.R. Hyland, author of God's Covenant with Animals and editorial director for Humane Religion Publications. Eva and Israel Mossman, coordinators of the Jewish Vegetarians of North America, JVNA, and editors of its newsletter, Sandra Carla, Roberta Kulikovsky, founder and director of Jews for Animal Rights, JA, author of Vegetarian Judaism and several other books on vegetarianism and animal rights, editor and publisher, H. Ed of Mika Publications, Inc. Introduction 23 Stephen Kaufman, co-chair of the Medical Research Modernization Committee, Director of the Christian Vegetarian Association, Nina Natelson, founder and coordinator of Concern for Helping Animals in Israel, Dana Oda, Food Irradiation Coordinator for the Organic Consumers Association, Kate Palmer, longtime Jewish vegetarian, vegan, environmental, and animal rights activist, Murray Polner, former editor of Present Tense magazine, co-chair of the Jewish Peace Fellowship, and editor of Shalom, the Jewish Peace Letter, Mindy Ribner, author of New Age Judaism, Jewish meditation instructor, Rabbi David Rosen, former Chief Rabbi of Ireland and current Director of the Jerusalem office of the Anti-Defamation League, Don Seaman, lecturer in anthropology, Hebrew University, Charles Stiller, co-coordinator of the Vegetarian Resource Group, Lara Dennis Wertheimer, assistant professor of philosophy, University of California, Irvine, Yossi Wolfson, coordinator of Anonymous, Israel's largest animal rights organization. I am very grateful to Jean Rasmussen and Joseph Rockumbly for running drafts of the manuscript. The excellent work done by Martin Rowe at Lantern Books in editing and producing this volume is much appreciated. I apologize to any contributors whom I inadvertently omitted. I wish to express deep appreciation to my wife, Loretta, our children, Susan, and David Clyde, David, and Deborah, and Riel Glutch, and our grandchildren, Shalom Eliyahu, Ilet Braindle, Avital P. Nina, and Michael, Naama Clyde, and Eliyahu, Ilan Avraham, and Joseph Glutch, for their patience, understanding, and encouragement as I took time away from other responsibilities to gather and write this material. Although all of these people have been very helpful, the author takes full responsibility for the final selection of material and interpretations. Finally, I wish to thank in advance all who will read this volume and send me ideas and suggestions for improvements so that this book can help lead toward that day when none shall hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. Isaiah 11:9. Ksiv Judaism and Vegetarianism in loving memory of my mother and father-in-law Bessie and Edward Susskind, whose guidance and devotion were always an inspiration. God's initial intention was that people be vegetarians. The foremost Jewish Torah commentator, Rashi, 1040-1105, says the following about God's first dietary law. Above, God did not permit Adam and his wife to kill a creature and to eat its flesh. Only every green herb shall they all eat together. 1 Most Torah commentators, including Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra, 1092-1167, Maimonides, 1135-1214, Nachmanides, 1194-1270, and Rabbi Joseph Albo, d. 1444, agree with this assessment. As Rabbi Moses Cassuto, 1883-1951, in his commentary From Adam to Noah notes, you are permitted to use the animals and employ them for work. Have dominio n over them in order to utilize their services for your subsistence, but must not hold their life cheap nor slaughter them for food. Your natural diet is vegetarian, too. These views are consistent with the Talmud, which says that people were initially vegetarians. Adam was not permitted meat for purposes of eating. 3. The great 13th century Jewish commentator Nachmanides claims that one reason behind this initial human diet is the kinship between all sentient beings. Living creatures possess a soul and a certain spiritual superiority, which in this respect make them similar to those who possess intellect, human beings, and they have the power of affecting 1. A vegetarian view of the Bible. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb yielding seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree that has seed yielding fruit, to you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29, their own welfare and their food, and they flee from pain and death. 4. 15th century Jewish philosopher Rabbi Joseph Albo adds that in the killing of animals there is cruelty, rage, and the accustoming of oneself to the evil habit of shedding innocent blood. 5. God's original dietary plan represents a unique statement in humanity's spiritual history. It is a spiritual blueprint of a vegetarian world order. Yet many millions of people have read this Torah verse, Genesis 1:29, and passed it by without considering its meaning. After stating that people must adhere to a vegetarian diet, the Torah indicates that animals were not initially intended to prey on one another but to also subsist on purely vegetarian food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, wherein there is a living soul, I have given every green herb for food. Genesis 1:30. Immediately after giving these dietary laws, God sees everything He has made, and behold, it was very good. Genesis 1:31. Everything in the universe is as God wanted it, in complete harmony, with nothing superfluous or lacking. 6. The vegetarian diet is consistent with God's initial plan. There are other indications in the early chapters of Genesis that people originally were to be sustained on vegetarian diets. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat," Genesis 2:16. "And you shall eat the herbs of the field," Genesis 3:18. Chapter 5 of Genesis tells of the long lives of people in the vegetarian generations from Adam to Noah. Adam lives 930 years, Seth, Adam's son, 912 years, Enosh, Seth's son, 905 years, Kenan, Enosh's son, 910 years. And so on, until Methuselah, who lives 969 years, the longest life recorded. 2. Judaism and Vegetarianism in the Torah. After the flood, people lived for much shorter periods. Abraham, for example, lives only 175 years. Why the tremendous change in lifespans? A partial explanation may be that the change in diet contributed to the change in lifespans. Before the flood, people were forbidden to eat meat. After the flood it was permitted, Genesis 9:3. This view that meat-eating shortened lives was held by Nachmanides. 7. Recent evidence linking heavy meat consumption with numerous diseases reinforces this point of view. See Chapter 3. Of course, a shift to sensible vegetarian diets would not increase lifespans to anywhere near those attributed to early biblical people, but recent medical evidence indicates that it would lead to an increase in the average span and quality of life. The strongest support for vegetarianism as a positive ideal in Torah literature is in the writing of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Kook, 1865–1935. Rav Kook was the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi of pre-state Israel and a highly respected and beloved Jewish spiritual leader. He was a mystical thinker and a great Torah scholar. He spoke powerfully on vegetarianism, as recorded in A Vision of Vegetarianism and Peace, edited by Rav Kook's disciple, Rabbi David Cohen, the Nazir of Jerusalem. Rav Kook believed that the permission to eat meat was only a temporary concession. He felt that a God who is merciful to his creatures would not institute an everlasting law permitting the killing of animals for food. 8. He states, "The progress of dynamic ideals will not be eternally blocked. Through general moral and intellectual advancement, shall the latent aspiration of justice for the animal kingdom come out into the open, when the time is ripe. 9. People are not always ready to live up to God's highest ideals. By the time of Noah, humanity had morally degenerated. And God saw the earth, and behold it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Genesis 6:12. People had sunk so low that they would eat a limb torn from a living animal as a concession to people's weakness. 10. A vegetarian view of the Bible. 3. Permission to eat meat was then given. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, as the green herb have I given you all. Genesis 9:3. According to Rav Kook, because people had descended to such an extremely low spiritual level, it was necessary that they be taught to value human life above that of animals, and that they first emphasize the improvement of relationships between people. He felt that if people were denied the right to eat the flesh of animals, some might eat the flesh of human beings instead, due to their inability to control a lust for flesh. He regarded the permission to slaughter animals for food as a transitional tax or temporary dispensation, until a brighter era dawns, when people will return to vegetarian diets. 11. Rabbi Joseph Albo suggests that, in the era before the flood, some people developed the mistaken idea that the reason they were not permitted to eat meat was that human beings and animals were on the same moral level, so human beings were no more responsible for their actions than were animal. Albo indicates that such a view led to moral degeneracy and ultimately to the Great Flood. He states that the prohibition against eating meat was removed after the flood so that human beings would realize they were on a higher level than animals, and that they therefore had a greater degree of responsibility. 12. However, the laws of Kashrut later greatly limited the conditions under which Jews could eat meat. Isaac Hebenstriet, a Polish rabbi who wrote Kivrot HaTorah, The Graves of Lust, in 1929, contends that God never wanted people to eat meat, because of the cruelty involved. People shouldn't kill any living thing and fill their stomachs by destroying other life. He asserts that God temporarily gave permission to eat meat because of the conditions after the flood, when all plant life had been destroyed. 13. Just prior to allowing Noah and his family to eat meat, God says, "And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, and upon all wherewith the ground teems, and upon all the fish of the sea, into your hands are they delivered." Genesis 9:2. For Judaism and Vegetarianism. Now that there is permission to eat animals, the previous harmony between people and animals no longer exists. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, 1808–1888, the outstanding German Neo-Orthodox Torah commentator, argued that the attachment between people and animals was broken after the flood, a rift that initiated a change in the relationship of people to the world. 14. The permission given to Noah to eat meat was not unconditional. There was an immediate prohibition against eating blood, only flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat. Genesis 9:4. Similar statements are made in Leviticus 19:26, 17:10 and 12 and Deuteronomy 12:16, 23, and 25, and 15:23. The Torah identifies blood with life, for the blood is the life, Deuteronomy 12:23. Life must be removed from the animal before it can be eaten, and the Talmud specifies an elaborate process for doing so. A modern conservative rabbi, Samuel Dressner, commenting on the dietary laws, indicates the removal of blood which Kashrut teaches is one of the most powerful means of making us constantly aware of the concession and compromise which the whole act of eating meat, in reality, is. Again it teaches us reverence for life. 15. Biblical commentator Rabbi Moses Cassuto states, apparently the Torah was in principle opposed to the eating of meat. When Noah and his descendants were permitted to eat meat, this was a concession conditional on the prohibition of the blood. This prohibition implied respect for the principle of life, for the blood is the life, and an allusion to the fact that in reality all meat should have been prohibited. This partial prohibition was designed to call to mind the previously total 1.16. Immediately after permission is given to eat meat, God says, "And surely, the blood of your lives will I require." Genesis 9:5. The rabbis base the prohibition of suicide on these words. 17 The fact that this statement, a vegetarian view of the Bible 5, comes directly after flesh is permitted, perhaps also hints that eating meat is a slow form of suicide. Maybe God is warning us, I prefer that you do not eat meat. But if you choose to eat meat, there will be a penalty, your lifeblood will I require. 18 In other words, if people choose to live amid violence, by slaughtering and eating animals, they must pay a penalty. Their lives will be shortened. This speculation is consistent with the decrease in biblical lifespans that occurred after permission to eat meat was given, and also with modern research in health and nutrition. According to Rabbi Isaac Aramah, 1420-1494, author of Akedat Yiskuk, after the Israelites left Egypt, God tries to establish another non-meat diet, manna. 19 The Torah introduces the story of the manna with the following divine message, which Moses conveys to the Israelites in response to their concern about what they will eat in the desert. God said to Moses, "Behold, I shall rain down for you food from heaven, and the people shall go out and gather a certain portion every day." Exodus 16:4. Manna is described in the Torah as a food that does not come from animals and that tastes like coriander seed. Numbers 11:7. The rabbis of the Talmud held that the manna had whatever taste and flavor the eater desired at the time of eating. It must also have had sufficient nutrient value, because Moses says that it is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. Exodus 16:15. Rabbi J. H. Hertz, 1872-1946, former chief rabbi of Great Britain, comments on God's beneficence in providing the manna to sustain the Israelites. God in his ever-sustaining providence fed Israel's host during the weary years of wandering in his own unsearchable way. 20. The manna teaches the children of Israel several lessons, which are significant from a vegetarian point of view. 1. God provides for our needs. Sufficient manna is available for each day's requirements. In the same way, vegetarian diets can result in enough food for all. A meat diet leads to scarcity of food for some and the potential for violence. See chapters 4 and 6. 6. Judaism and Vegetarianism. 2. We should be content with what we have. 21 In the Bible, each person was to gather 1 omer, a measure, of manna, but some gathered more and some less. When they measured it out, they found that whether they had gathered much or little, they had just enough to meet their needs. As it is written, they gathered out an omer, and he that gathered much had nothing left over, and he that gathered little had no lack. Everyone according to his eating had they gathered. Exodus 16:18. Again, a vegetarian diet provides enough for everyone's needs. With a meat-centered diet, some eat more than they need, and many are malnourished. 3. Enough was provided on Friday morning so that there was no need to gather manna on the Sabbath. The people were commanded to rest on the seventh day. See Exodus 16:5, 22-30. With a vegetarian diet, people do not need to continually struggle for their means of subsistence. They are able to truly rest, to have a peaceful Sabbath, knowing that their needs are being met, and thus there is no reason to struggle for necessities. The Israelites are not satisfied, however, with the simple diet of manna that sustained them in the desert. They complain, "Would that we were given flesh to eat." Numbers 11:4. God is angry and Moses is displeased. God reluctantly provides meat in the form of quail, which is brought by a wind from the sea. While the flesh is still in the mouths of the Israelites, even before it is chewed, the anger of God is kindled against the people and he strikes them with a great plague. Numbers 11:433. Note the following key points from a vegetarian point of view. 1. God wanted the people to be sustained on manna. He was displeased when they cried for flesh to eat. 2. Perhaps the many deaths due to the plague were intended to teach the Israelites that they should not eat meat, and, if they did, it would have dire consequences. 3. The place where this incident occurred was named the graves of lust to indicate that the strong desire for flesh led to the many deaths. Numbers 11:34. While manna, their staple food in the desert, kept the Israelites in good health for 40 years, many deaths occurred when they deviated from this simple diet. A vegetarian view of the Bible. 7. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, animals could only be slaughtered and eaten as part of the sacrificial service in the sanctuary. Leviticus 17:3-5. The eating of unconsecrated meat, meat from animals slaughtered for private consumption, was not permitted. Every meat meal, therefore, had to be an integral part of a sacrificial rite. Maimonides states that the biblical sacrifices were a concession to the primitive practices of the nations at that time. 22. The sacrifices will be discussed in more detail in chapter 7, question 5. Finally, God permitted people to eat meat even if it was not part of a sacrificial offering. When the Lord your God shall enlarge your border as he has promised you, and you shall say, I will eat flesh because your soul desires to eat flesh, you may eat flesh, after all the desire of your soul. Deuteronomy 12:20. This permitted meat was called Basar Tarava, meat of lust, so named because rabbinic teachings indicate that meat is not considered a necessity for life. E.23. The above verse does not command people to eat meat. Rabbinic tradition understands it as indicating people's desire to eat flesh, not God's dictum that people must do so, even while arguing against vegetarianism. As a moral cause, Rabbi Elijah Judah Scochet, author of Animal Life in Jewish Tradition, concedes that Scripture does not command the Israelite to eat meat, but rather permits this diet as a concession to lust. 24. Similarly, another critic of vegetarian activism, Rabbi J. David Bleach, a noted contemporary Torah scholar and professor at Yeshiva University, states, the implication is that meat may be consumed when there is desire and appetite for it as food, but it may be eschewed when there is not desire and a fortiori, when it is found to be repugnant. 25. According to Rabbi Bleach, Jewish tradition does not command carnivorous behavior. 26. Commenting on the above Torah verse, Deuteronomy 12:20, the respected Torah scholar and teacher Nehama Leibowitz, 1905-1997, points out how odd the permission is and how grudgingly the permission to eat meat is granted. She concludes that people have not been granted 8. Judaism and Vegetarianism dominion over animals to do with them as they desire, but that we have been given a barely tolerated dispensation to slaughter animals for our consumption, if we cannot resist temptation and must eat meat. 27 Rav Kook also regarded the same Torah verse as clearly indicating that the Torah did not regard the slaughter of animals for human consumption as an ideal state of affairs. 28 Rabbi Ebenstriet points out that God did not want to give the Israelites who had left Egypt permission to return to a meat diet because it involved cruelty to animals. However, the mixed multitude, other slaves, who left Egypt with the Jews, lusted for meat and inculcated this desire among the Jewish people. Hence, God reluctantly gave permission once again for the consumption of meat, but with many restrictions. 29 The Talmud expresses this negative connotation associated with the consumption of meat. The Torah teaches a lesson in moral conduct, that man shall not eat meat unless he has a special craving for it, and shall eat it only occasionally and sparingly. 30 The sages also state that eating meat was not for everyone. Only a scholar of Torah may eat meat, but one who is ignorant of Torah is forbidden to eat meat. 31 Some authorities explain this restriction in practical terms. Only a Torah scholar can properly observe all the laws of animal slaughter and meat preparation. While there are few conditions on the consumption of vegetarian foods, only a diligent Torah scholar can fully comprehend the many regulations governing the preparation and consumption of meat. However, Master Kabbalist Rabbi Isaac Luria explains it in spiritual terms. Only a Torah scholar can elevate the holy sparks trapped in the animal. How many Jews today can consider themselves so scholarly and spiritually advanced to be able to eat meat? Those who do diligently study the Torah and are aware of conditions related to the production and a vegetarian view of the Bible 9 consumption of meat today would, I believe, come to conclusions similar to those in this book. Rav Kook writes that the permission to eat meat after all the desire of your soul was a concealed reproach and an implied reprimand. 32 He argues that a day will come when people will detest the eating of the flesh of animals because of a moral loathing, and then people will not eat meat because their soul will not have the urge to eat it. 33 In contrast to the lust associated with flesh foods, the Torah looks favorably on vegetarian foods. In the Song of Songs, the divine bounty is mentioned in terms of fruits, vegetables, vines, and nuts. There is no special bracha, blessing, recited before eating meat or fish, as there is for other foods such as bread, cake, wine, fruits, and vegetables. The blessing for meat is a general one, the same as that over water or any other undifferentiated food. Typical of the Torah's positive depiction of non-flesh foods is the following. For the Lord your God brings you into a good land, a land of brooks, of water, of fountains and depths, springing forth in valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land wherein you shall eat bread without scarceness, you shall not lack anything in it, and you shall eat and be satisfied, and bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. Deuteronomy 8:7-10 I will give you the rain of your land in its due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your corn, and your wine, and your oil. Deuteronomy 11:14 Among many similar statements by the prophets are I shall return my people from captivity, and they shall build up the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine from them, and they shall make gardens and eat the fruit from them, and I shall plant them upon their land. Amos 9:14-15. 10. Judaism and vegetarianism build houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. Jeremiah 29:5. Rabbi Yonasan Gershom, a Hasidic rabbi from Minnesota, remarks concerning the priority given to blessings, meat is on the bottom of the hierarchy. He notes that on Sabbaths and festivals, wine comes first. Otherwise, bread comes first, and a blessing over bread covers all other foods except wine. If there is no bread, foods are blessed in the following order: 1. Wine, 2. Baked grains, 3. Tree fruits, 4. Vegetables, 5. All other foods, including fish, meat, etc. In other words, meat has the lowest priority in the bracha, blessing, system. Also, when bread is eaten, a full Birkat Hamazon, grace after meals, is to be recited. After eating the grains and fruits, the 7 species, mentioned in the Torah, Deuteronomy 8:7-10, there is a shorter blessing recited, Al-Hamikoyah. But if only other foods such as meat or fish are eaten, only one sentence is to be recited. Boya Nefashot. Since, as our sages taught, words have replaced sacrifices. Today, apparently flesh foods are least honored. The permission to eat meat is circumscribed by many laws and restrictions, the laws of kashrut. Rav Kook suggests that the reprimand implied by these regulations is an elaborate apparatus designed to keep alive a sense of reverence for life, with the aim of eventually leading people away from meat eating. 34. Rav Kook is not the only Torah authority to voice such sentiments. Torah commentator Rabbi Solomon Ephraim Lunshitz comments in his classic work Kli Yakar. What was the necessity for the entire procedure of ritual slaughter? For the sake of self-discipline. It is far more appropriate for man not to eat meat, only if he has a strong desire for meat does the Torah permit it, and even this only after the trouble and inconvenience necessary to satisfy his desire. Perhaps because of the bother and annoyance of the whole procedure, he will be restrained from such a strong and uncontrollable desire for meat. 35. Pinchas Peli, a 20th century Orthodox rabbi, makes a similar statement. A vegetarian view of the Bible 11. Accordingly, the laws of kashrut come to teach us that a Jew's first preference should be a vegetarian meal. If, however, one cannot control a craving for meat, it should be kosher meat, which would serve as a reminder that the animal being eaten is a creature of God, that the death of such a creature cannot be taken lightly, that hunting for sport is forbidden, that we cannot treat any living thing callously, and that we are responsible for what happens to other beings, human or animal, even if we did not personally come into contact with them. 36. Rav Kook argued that the high moral level involved in the vegetarianism of the generations before Noah was a virtue of such great value that it cannot be lost forever. 37. In the future ideal period, he thought people and animals would again not eat flesh. 38. People's lives would not be supported at the expense of animals' lives. Rav Kook based these views on the prophecy of Isaiah And the wolf shall dwell with the lamb. And the leopard shall lie down with the kid. And the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed. Their young ones shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like the ox. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. Isaiah 11:6-9. In his booklet summarizing many of Rav Kook's teachings, Joseph Green, a 20th century South African Jewish vegetarian writer, concludes that Jewish religious ethical vegetarians are pioneers of the Messianic era. They are leading lives that make the coming of the Messiah more likely. 39. The Jewish tradition asserts that one way to speed the coming of the Messiah is to start practicing the ways that will prevail in the Messianic time. For example, the Talmud teaches that if all Jews properly observed 2 consecutive Sabbaths, the Messiah would immediately come. 40. This 12. Judaism and vegetarianism means symbolically that when all Jews reach the level when they can fully observe the Sabbath in terms of devotion to God and compassion for people and animals, the conditions would be such that the Messianic period would have arrived. Hence, based on Rav Kook's teaching, if all became vegetarian in the proper spirit, with compassion for all animals and human beings, and concern about preserving and honoring God's world, this might very well hasten the arrival of the Messiah. Although most Jews eat meat today, the high ideal of God, the initial vegetarian dietary law, stands supreme in the Torah for Jews and the whole world to see, an ultimate goal toward which all people should strive. A vegetarian view of the Bible. 13. While our teacher Moses was tending the flock of Jethro in the wilderness, a kid ran away from him. He ran after the kid until it reached Haswa. Upon reaching Haswa, the kid came upon a body of water and began to drink. When Moses reached him, he said, "I did not know that you were running because you were thirsty. You must be tired." He placed the kid on his shoulder and began to walk. The Holy One, blessed be He, said, "You are compassionate in leading flocks belonging to mortals. I swear you will similarly shepherd my flock, Israel." Midrash Exodus Rabbah 2:2. Animals are part of God's creation and people are given special responsibilities toward them. The Jewish tradition clearly indicates that we are forbidden to be cruel to animals and that we are to treat them with compassion. These concepts are summarized in the Hebrew phrase Ba'alei, the biblical mandate not to cause pain to any living creature. This Torah-based teaching is found in all strata of Jewish texts and history and occupies a central place in Jewish ethical practice. It is part of the Jewish vision of what it means to be a tzaddik, righteous individual, and to imitate God's ways. In ancient times, the mandate of not causing unnecessary suffering animals led to highly regulated meat eating. This chapter aims to demonstrate that the modern realities of raising animals severely violate Jewish teachings and present major halachic and moral questions. Psalms 104 and 148s. How God's close identification with the animals of the field, creatures of the sea, and birds of the air. Psalm 104 pictures God as giving drink to every beast of the field and causing grass to spring up for the cattle. Sea animals and birds are given the same blessing /injunction as our people, be fruitful and multiply, Genesis 1:22. Animals are initially given a vegetarian diet similar to that of people. Genesis 1:29-30. The Hebrew term nefesh shaya, a living soul, is applied in Genesis 1:21-24 to animals as well as people. In contrast to 15. 2. Tsarbaleim. Judaism and compassion. For animals the way people regard and treat animals today, these teachings show the very high regard that God has for them and wants people to have for them. Although the Torah states that people are to have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth, Genesis 1:28, there is to be a basic relatedness. And the rights and privileges of animals are not to be neglected or overlooked. As indicated previously, people's dominion over animals is immediately limited by God's first, completely vegetarian, dietary law. Genesis 1:29, and this is quickly followed by God's statement that all of creation is very good, Genesis 1:31, showing that this vegetarian diet is consistent with the stewardship that God wants people to practice. While the Torah states that only human beings are created in the divine image, Genesis 5:1, animals are also God's creatures, possessing sensitivity and the capacity for feeling pain. Hence God is very concerned that they be protected and treated with compassion and justice. In fact, to be created in the divine image, state the sages, means that people have the power to emulate the divine compassion to all creatures. As God is compassionate, they teach, so you should be compassionate. 1. In his classic work Ahavat Chaste, the love of kindness, the revered Chafetz Chaim discusses this teaching at length, and he writes that whoever emulates the divine love and compassion to all creatures will bear the stamp of God on his person. 2. Rabbi Hirsch also discussed this concept. You can know God only through his acts of love and justice, and in turn, you too are called upon to act with love and justice, not merely to indulge or endure. 3. In this spirit, Rabbi Hirsch states, we human beings were created to serve, work, and safeguard the earth, Genesis 2:15, and this limits our rights over other creatures and all living things. He writes, the earth was not created as a gift to you. You have been given to the earth, to treat it with respectful consideration, as God's earth. 16. Judaism and Vegetarianism and everything on it as God's creation, as your fellow creatures. To be respected, loved, and helped to attain their purpose. According to God's will, this end, your heartstrings vibrate sympathetically. If any cry of distress sounding anywhere in creation, and with any glad sound uttered by a joyful creature. 4. God even makes treaties and covenants with animals, as he did with humans. As for me, says the Lord, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the fowl, the cattle, and every animal of the earth. With you, of all that go out of the ark, even every animal of the earth. Genesis 9:9-10. And in that day will I make a covenant for them with the animals of the field and with the fowls of heaven and with the creeping things of the ground. And I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the land, and I will make them to lie down safely. Hosea 2:20. In contrast to modern law, which generally considers animals as material possessions and thus permits them to be cruelly treated, divine law in the Bible as reflected in God's covenants considers animals worthy of recognition and commitment. Ecclesiastes examines the kinship between people and animals. Both are described as sharing common fates of mortality. For that which befalls the sons of men befalls animals. Even one thing befalls them. As the one dies, so dies the other. Yes, they all have one breath. So that man has no preeminence above an animal. For all is vanity. Tsarbaleich 17 All go to one place, all are of the dust. Who knows the spirit of men whether it goes upward? And the spirit of he animal whether it goes downward to the earth. Ecclesiastes 3:19-21. God considers animals, as well as people, when he admonishes Jonah, and should I not have pity on Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 600,000 persons, and also much cattle. Jonah 4:11. The psalmist indicates God's concern for animals in declaring, His tender mercies are over all His creatures, Psalms 145:9. This statement serves as a cornerstone of rabbinic teachings on compassion to animals. The author of Psalms also pictures God as satisfying the desire of every living creature, Psalms 145:16, providing food for animals and birds. Psalms 147:9, and, in general, preserving both people and animals. Psalms 36:7. The Talmud describes God providing animals with the attributes necessary for survival in their environment. For example, the camel has a short tail so it won't become ensnared when she feeds upon thorns. The ox has a long tail so he can protect himself from gnats when he feeds in the plains. The antennae of locusts are flexible so they won't break against trees and blind the locusts. 5. Perhaps the Jewish attitude toward animals is best summarized by the statement in Proverbs 12:10, the righteous person regards the life of his or her animal. This is the human counterpoint of the Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his creatures, Psalms 145:9. One who is cruel to animals cannot be regarded as a righteous individual. In his explanation of Proverbs 12:10, the Malbim, a 19th century biblical commentator, explains that the righteous person understands the nature of his or her animal, and hence gives the animal food at the proper time and according to the amount needed. He is also careful not to overwork the animal. For, according to the Malbim, the Tzaddik, righteous person, acts according to the laws of justice. Not only does he act according to these laws with human beings, but also with animals. 6.18 Judaism and Vegetarianism. Torah laws involving compassion for animals. 1. It is forbidden to cause pain to any animal. Maimonides 7 and Rabbi Judah HaHasid 8, 1150-1217 state that this is based on the biblical statement of the angel of God to Balaam. Wherefore have you smitten your ass? Numbers 22:32. This verse is used in the Talmud as a prime source for its assertion that we are to treat animals humanely. 9 The Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, is more explicit and specific. 10. It is forbidden, according to the law of the Torah, to inflict pain upon any living creature. On the contrary, it is our duty to relieve the pain of any creature, even if it is ownerless or belongs to a non-Jew. When horses, drawing a cart, come to a rough road or a steep hill, and it is hard for them to draw the cart without help, it is our duty to help them, even when they belong to a non-Jew, because of the precept not to be cruel to animals, lest the owner smite them to force them to die, or more than their strength permits. It is forbidden to tie the legs of a beast or of a bird in a manner which will cause them pain. 2. You shall not muzzle the ox when he threshes out the corn. Deuteronomy 25:4. At the time of threshing, when the ox is surrounded by the food that he enjoys so much, he should not be prevented from satisfying his appetite. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch states that this prohibition gives the animal that helps you harvest the fruits of the earth a right to these fruits while working. No means may be used to prevent him from eating. 11. He cites the Shulchan Aruch 12 as indicating that one may prevent an animal from eating when the fruits might harm him. 13. Rashi, citing Baba Kama 54b in support, contends that this law also applies to other animals, including birds. 14. Tsarbaleichm 19. Professor C. H. Cornell contrasts the humanitarianism of this law with a modern European grape harvest, in which one of the richest Italian real estate owners fastened iron muzzles to the miserable, fever-stricken workmen, so that it might not occur to these poor peasants working for starvation wages under the glowing sun of southern Italy to satiate their burning thirst and their gnawing hunger with a few of the millions of grapes of the owner. 15. Because of this and similar legislation, William Lecky, the distinguished British historian, argues that tenderness to animals is one of the most beautiful features in the Hebrew Scriptures. 16. 3. You shall not plow with an ox and an ass together. Deuteronomy 22:10. Such an act would cause the weaker animal great pain in trying to keep up with the stronger. The stronger would also suffer by being deprived of his usual routine, by having to act contrary to his instinctive nature. The Talmud extends this law to apply to any case where there are two animals involved, one strong and one weak, and to other activities such as driving carts or wagons. 17. You may not allow one task to be done together by animals of two species. You may not allow them to carry the smallest thing together, even if it be only a seed. You may not sit in a wagon drawn by animals of differing species. 18. Rabbi Hirsch concludes that one should not unite animals of different species and different capabilities for any activities. 19. The Sfer Hachim Yuj, a classic work on the 613 mitzvot, commandments, of the Torah, indicates this involves the biblical prohibition against causing suffering to animals, since it is known that there are species of animals and birds which develop anxiety if they dwell together with those that are not of their species, even more so if one works them together. 20. Judaism and Vegetarianism. 4. A person should not eat before first providing for his or her animals. 21. This is based on Deuteronomy 11:15, and I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you shall eat and be satisfied. God provides food for the cattle before people, and we are to imitate God. According to Rabbi Elazar Hakapar, a Talmudic sage, no one should buy a domestic animal, wild beast, or bird unless he or she is able to feed the animal properly. 22. The duty to feed an animal first is so great that a person must interrupt the performance of a rabbinic commandment if one is not sure animals have been properly fed. 23. 5 animals, as well as people, must be allowed to rest on the Sabbath day. The Kiddush, sanctification over wine or grape juice, that is recited on Sabbath mornings includes the following verse from the 10 Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor, and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath unto the Lord, your God. In it you shall not do any manner of work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that is within your gates. Exodus 20:8-10. Similar statements occur in Exodus 23:12 and Deuteronomy 5:12-14. Based on these Torah statements, Rashi states that animals must be free to roam on the Sabbath day and graze freely and enjoy the beauties of nature. 24 The fact that animals are mentioned within the 10 Commandments expresses the importance placed on compassion for animals in Judaism. Rabbi J. H. Hertz, in commenting on Exodus 20:10, writes, "It is one of the glories of Judaism that thousands of years ago, it so fully recognized our duties to animals." 25. Tsarbalei. Chaim 21 In a similar manner, animals are to be provided for during the sabbatical year. The produce that grows freely during that period is to be enjoyed by animals of the field as well as by the poor. Leviticus 25:6-7. 6 It is forbidden to sacrifice a newborn ox, sheep, or goat until it has had at least 7 days of warmth and nourishment from its mother. Leviticus 22:27. This precept shows the desire of the Torah to spare the feelings of living creatures and to instill a spirit of compassion in people. Rabbi Eli Monk, a 20th-century biblical commentator, writes concerning the above precept, "For the sages of the Midrash, this waiting period is symptomatic of the divine compassion for the mother. It would be cruel to tear away her young so soon after birth." 26 A Midrash, a rabbinic commentary, expressed in parables and stories, that brings out a deeper meaning of a Torah verse. On the above mitzvah states, "The righteous person knows the soul of his animal." Proverbs 12:10, is referring to the Holy One, God, blessed be He, as it is written in the Torah, "When a bull, sheep, or goat is born, he shall remain under his mother for 7 days." 27. 7 And whether it be ox or ewe, you shall not kill the animal and her young both in 1 day. Leviticus 22:28. This law prohibits a practice performed in some ancient cults of sacrificing an animal and her young together. Maimonides comments on this verse as follows: "It is prohibited to kill an animal with her young on the same day, in order that people should be restrained and prevented from killing the two together in such a manner that the young is slain in the sight of the mother, for the pain of animals under such circumstances is very great." There is no difference in this case between the pain of people and the pain of other living beings, since the love and the tenderness of the mother for her young ones. 22 Judaism and vegetarianism is not produced by reasoning but by feeling, and this faculty exists not only in people but in most living things. 28. 8 We are forbidden to take the mother bird and her young together. The mother bird must be sent away before her young are taken. Deuteronomy 22:6-7. For showing compassion to the mother bird, the Torah promises us a long life. Maimonides comments that when the Mother bird is sent away, she does not see the taking of her young ones, and thus does not feel any pain at that time. 29 Furthermore, in most cases, the commandment will result in the entire nest being left untouched, because the young or the eggs, which people are allowed to take, are generally unfit for human food, because eggs with blood or veins developing are not kosher. 30 Maimonides also observes that if we are commanded not to cause grief to animals and to birds, we must be even more careful not to cause grief to people. 31. However, in their commentaries on the above Torah verse, Nachmanides and Rabbi Bar Shia ben Asher, a 13th century sage, connect the above law and the prohibition against slaughtering an animal along with its young to the preservation of species. 32 Thus, it may be that these prohibitions are intended to remind us of the limits on our power over other creatures, and of our need to respect and preserve the manifold species which God created. 9 We should not boil a kid in the milk of his mother. Exodus 23:19, 34 hours 26 minutes, Deuteronomy 14:21. Commenting on Exodus 23:19, Rashi notes that the repetition of this prohibition in 3 different biblical passages implies a threefold ban. 1. Milk and meat must not be eaten together. 2. They must not be cooked together. And 3. It is forbidden to benefit from food containing a mixture of milk and meat. Some Torah authorities, including Maimonides, see the above law as a rejection of an ancient pagan practice. However, Abraham ibn Ezra, a 12th century sage, writes that, although the ultimate reason for this prohibition is beyond human understanding, it may be because it is an act Tsarbaleichem 23 of a cruel heart to cook a kid in his mother's milk. 33 That is, it is insensitive and cruel to take milk, a substance that the Creator made to nurture life, and to use it in a way connected to the destruction of that life. Rashbam 1080-1174, also considered this practice as denoting gross insensitivity and cruelty. 34. 10 Animals should not be allowed to suffer discomfort from a heavy burden. If you see the ass of him who had fallen due to its burden, you shall surely not pass him by, you shall surely unload it with him. Exodus 23:5. According to the sages, this commandment mandates both a humane approach toward the animal and a charitable approach toward an enemy. Indeed, they teach that the greatest hero is a person who turns an enemy into a friend. 35 The Talmud connects the above precept to the prohibition of causing pain to animals, since the animal is clearly suffering from the burden. It is, therefore, a mitzvah to relieve the suffering of the animal. 36. 11 We must be vigilant concerning the well-being of a lost animal. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep driven away and hide yourself from them, you shall surely bring them back unto your brother. Deuteronomy 22:1. In addition, the animal must be cared for until the owner's return. 12 We are to walk in God's ways. Deuteronomy 28:9. In his explanation of the precept to walk in God's ways, Rabbi Hirsch amplifies the ancient teachings of the sages. As God is merciful, so you also be merciful. As he loves and cares for all his creatures because they are his creatures and his children and are related to him, because he is their father, so you also love all his creatures as your brethren. Let their joys be your joys, and their sorrows yours. Love them, and with every power which God gives you, work for their welfare and benefit, because 24 Judaism and Vegetarianism. They are the children of your God, because they are your brothers and sisters. 37. Another 19th century authority, Rabbi Moshe Sufer, known as the Hatam Sufer, regards obligations toward animals as predicated upon emulation of divine conduct. Thus, he cites the verse, His tender mercies are over all His creatures, Psalms 145:9, as imposing an obligation upon human beings to show compassion toward animals. 38. 13. Throughout the ages, the rabbis strongly disapproved of hunting as a sport. 39. A Jew is permitted to capture fish, animals, or fowl only for purposes of human food or what is considered another essential human need. But to destroy an animal for sport constitutes wanton destruction and is to be condemned, based on the statement not to stand in the way of sinners. Psalms 1:1. The Talmud prohibits association with hunters. 40. A query was addressed to Rabbi Yechezkel Landor, 1713-1793, by a man wishing to know if he could hunt in his large estate, which included forests and fields. His response in the classic Noda B'Yehuda is as follows. In the Torah, the sport of hunting is imputed only to fierce characters like Nimrod and Esau, never to any of the patriarchs and their descendants. I cannot comprehend how a Jew could even dream of killing animals merely for the pleasure of hunting. When the act of killing is prompted by that of sport, it is downright cruelty. 41. 14. Shechita, Jewish ritual slaughter. Although the consumption of meat is permitted as a concession to people's weakness, and people came to think about it as necessary for proper nutrition, the Torah restricts this indulgence in various ways, especially through the complex laws of Shechita, ritual slaughter. 42. Aside from their spiritual effects and meanings, the laws of Shechita provide the most humane method of slaughtering animals. The knife to be used is regularly Tsarbaleim 25 examined to ensure that it is perfectly smooth, without a notch that might tear the flesh. The cut severs the arteries to the head of the animal, thus instantly stopping blood circulation to the head and minimizing the pain. The slaughterer, the shoshe, must meet stringent scholarly and moral standards. He is obligated to examine the animal for any possible disease, and to slaughter the animal according to Jewish law. The shoshe is required to be a learned, observant person who demonstrates a complete knowledge of the laws of Shechita. Also, he must recite a blessing prior to slaughter, an act that shows reverence for life. Thus the laws of Shechita may serve as a reminder that meat eating is a concession. Question 6 in Chapter 7 will consider Shechita further. 15. On Yom Kippur, the most sacred day of the Jewish year, when Jews fast, confess their sins, and pray for life and good health from God. In the coming year, it is forbidden to wear leather shoes. One reason is that it is not proper to plead for compassion when one has not shown compassion toward other living creatures. 43. Rabbi Moses Isserles, c. 1528-1572, known as the Ramah, states, How can a man put on shoes, a piece of clothing for which it is necessary to kill a living thing, on Yom Kippur, which is a day of grace and compassion? When it is written his tender mercies are over all his works, Psalms 145:9.44 Jews are required to recite a special benediction, Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us in life, and has preserved us and enabled us to reach this season when putting on a piece of clothing for the first time. However, an exception is made for furs and leather shoes because an animal had to be killed in making them. 45. The Code of Jewish Law has a similar statement. It is customary to say to one who puts on a new garment, may you wear it out and acquire a new one. But we do not express this wish to one who puts on new shoes or a new garment made of fur or leather, because a garment like this requires the killing of a living creature, and it is written, and his mercy is upon all his works. Psalms 145:9.46. 26 Judaism and Vegetarianism 16. Although the Torah contains no explicit general prohibition against cruelty to animals, there are so many commandments mandating humane treatment for them that the Talmudic rabbis explicitly declared this prohibition to be a biblical law. 47. Hence, various rabbinic Sabbath laws could be relaxed to relieve the suffering of an animal. For such purposes, one has permission to capture domestic animals. 48 Take care of their wounds when they are fresh and painful. 49 Race them around as a remedy for overeating. 50 Place them in water to cool them following an attack of congestion. 51 And assist them to free themselves from a pit or a body of water into which they have fallen. 52 In view of the paramount importance of the Sabbath in Judaism, indeed, the Zohar equates its observance to fulfillment of all of the Torah's commandments in their entirety, and the many restrictions on labor on this day. The above considerations indicate the importance that Judaism places on compassion to animals. Rabbi Hirsch eloquently summarizes the Jewish view on treatment of animals. Here you are faced with God's teaching, which obliges you not only to refrain from inflicting unnecessary pain on any animal, but to help and, when you can, to lessen the pain whenever you see an animal suffering, even through no fault of yours. 53. Examples of kindness to animals by biblical heroes. Many biblical leaders of Israel were trained for their tasks by being shepherds of flocks. As the Midrash quoted at the beginning of this chapter states, God tested Moses through his shepherding. The greatest Jewish teacher, leader, and prophet was found worthy, not because of abilities as a speaker, statesman, politician, or warrior, but because of his compassion for animals. God deemed David worthy of leading the Jewish people because he, like Moses, tended his sheep with devotion, bestowing upon them the care each one needed. David used to prevent the larger sheep from going out before the smaller ones. The smaller ones were then able to graze upon the Tsarbaleim 27 tender grass. Next he permitted the old sheep to feed on the ordinary grass. And finally the young, mature sheep consumed the tougher grass. 54. Rebekah was judged suitable to be Isaac's wife because of the kindness she showed to animals. Eliezer, the patriarch Abraham's servant, asked Rebekah for water for himself. She not only gave him water, but also eagerly provided water for his 10 thirsty camels. Rebekah's concern for camels was evidence of a tender heart and compassion for all God's creatures. It convinced Eliezer that Rebekah would make a suitable wife for Isaac, Genesis 24:11-20. The patriarch Jacob also demonstrated concern for animals. After their reconciliation, his brother Esau said to him, "Let us take our journey, and let us go, and I will go before you." But Jacob, concerned about his children and flocks, replied, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that the flocks and the herds giving suck are a care to me, and if my workers overdrive them one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant, and I will journey on gently, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come unto my Lord, unto so." Genesis 33:12-14. Consistent with the fact that concern for the well-being of animals is the test for a righteous individual, Jacob instructed his son Joseph to determine whether it is well with your brethren and well with the flock. Genesis 37:14. In the wilderness, the Israelites sought water for both themselves and their cattle, Numbers 20:4. The Torah states, "But Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built himself a house, and for his livestock he made shelters, he therefore named the place Sukkot, booths." Genesis 33:17. The Or HaChaim, in his comment on the above verse, suggested the name Sukkot commemorated the shelters that Jacob built for his animals, for this may have been the first time that anyone had taken the trouble to spare animals from the distress of sun and cold. Noah was called a tzaddik, righteous person, because of his extraordinary care of the animals on the ark. 55 He was careful to feed each species its appropriate food at the proper time. Indeed, the Midrash tells us that Noah did not sleep due to his continuous concern for the welfare of the animals. 56 The Torah explicitly designates only one other personality. 28 Judaism and Vegetarianism Joseph, as a tzaddik. In times of crisis, they both provided food for humans and animals. Stories from the Jewish tradition related to compassion for animals. Rabbi Judah the prince was sitting and studying the Torah in front of the Babylonian synagogue in Sehoris. A calf being taken to the slaughter-house came to him as if pleading, "Save me." Rabbi Judah said to it, "What can I do for you? For this you were created." As a punishment for his insensitivity, he suffered from a toothache for 13 years. One day, a creeping thing, a weasel, ran past Rabbi Judah's daughter who was about to kill him. He said to her, "My daughter, let it be, for it is written, and God's tender mercies are over all his works." Psalms 145:9. Because Rabbi Judah prevented an act of cruelty and unkindness to an animal, his health was restored to him and his toothache went away. 57. Evidently, even a person as important as Rabbi Judah the prince, redactor of the Mishnah, could forget to treat animals properly, and even such an important person is not forgiven by God until he performs an act to show that he properly understands the need to treat animals compassionately. Someone once asked the eminent Rav Sherer Gaon if Rabbi Judah was punished because he handed a calf over to the slaughterer, and was once again rewarded because he protected an animal from death. Should we learn from this not to slaughter any animal and not to kill harmful animals? 58 The Gaon's answer: animals that may harm people, such as snakes, lions, wolves, must be killed, if posing a danger, on the other hand, animals that do us no harm and are not needed for food or medicine should not be killed. To save a calf that we need for nourishment is not required of us. 59. Tsarbaleichem. 29. Now that we know that we do not need meat for nourishment and that, as a matter of fact, the consumption of flesh products harms our health. What a tremendously powerful argument for vegetarianism this story is. The Maharsha, 1555-1631, notes that Rabbi Judah was punished because it was a calf, rather than a mature animal that had at least tasted life's joys, that was being led to slaughter. 60. This implies that if animals have had a sufficient chance to experience life's pleasures, it would be permissible to slaughter them for food. However, today this concept also provides a strong argument for vegetarianism for, as discussed in the next section, modern-day farmed animals lack life's pleasures as they are raised from birth in closed confined spaces and denied fresh air, sunlight, exercise, and emotional fulfillment. The following stories also illustrate Jewish teachings related to compassion to animals. Rabbi Israel Salanter, one of the most distinguished Orthodox rabbis of the 19th century, failed to appear one Yom Kippur Eve to chant the sacred Kol Nidra prayer. His congregation became concerned, for it was inconceivable that their saintly rabbi would be late or absent on this very holy day. They sent out a search party to look for him. After much time, the rabbi was found in the barn of a Christian neighbor. On his way to the synagogue, Rabbi Salanter had come upon one of his neighbor's calves, lost and tangled in the brush. Seeing that the animal was in distress, he freed him and led him home through many fields and over many hills. His act of mercy represented the rabbi's prayers on that Yom Kippur evening. 61. Rabbi Zuzia of Hanipal, a Hasidic master, once was on a journey to collect money to ransom prisoners. He came to an inn and in one room found a large cage with many types of birds. He saw that the birds wanted to fly out of the cage and be free again. He burned with pity for them and said to himself, "Here you are, Zuzia, walking your feet off to ransom prisoners. But what greater ransoming of prisoners can there be than to free these birds from 30 Judaism and Vegetarianism their prison?" He then opened the cage, and the birds flew out into freedom. When the innkeeper saw the empty cage, he was very angry, and asked the people in the house who had released the birds. They answered that there was a man loitering around who appeared to be a fool and that he must have done it. The innkeeper shouted at Zuzia, "You fool! How could you rob me of my birds and make worthless the good money I paid for them?" Zuzia replied, "Have you read these words in the Psalms, His tender mercies are over all His work." Then the innkeeper beat Zuzia and then threw him out of the house. And Zuzia went his way serenely. 62. Rabbi Abramtsi was a man full of compassion. His compassion was for all living things. He would not walk on the grass of the field, lest he trample it down. He was very careful not to tread on grasshoppers or crawling insects. If a dog came to the door of his house, he would instruct the members of his household to feed the animal. In winter he would scatter crumbs of bread and seed on the windowsills. When sparrows and other birds arrived and began to pick at the food, he could not remove his gaze from them, and his face would light up with joy like that of a little child. He looked after his horses far better than his coachman did. When traveling, and the coach had to ascend an incline, he would climb down in order to lighten the load, and, more often than not, he would push the cart from behind. On summer days he would compel his coachman to stop on the way and turn aside to a field in order that the horses should rest and partake of the grass. The rabbi loved these rest periods in the forest. While the horses were grazing, he would sit under a tree and read a book. At times he would pray in the field or the forest. This gave him great pleasure, for he used to say, "The field and the forest are the most beautiful and finest of the houses of the Lord." It happened once that the rabbi was on the road on a Friday. It would take another 3 hours to reach home, due to the rain. Tsarbaleich 31 The road was very muddy. The wagon could only proceed with difficulty. The mud gripped the wheels and slowed down its progress. It was midday and they had not even completed half the journey. The horses were tired and worn out. They had no energy to proceed further. The rabbi told the driver to stop and give fodder to the horses, so that they could regain their strength. This was done. Afterwards, the journey was continued, but the going was heavy and the wagon sunk up to the hubs of the wheels in the mud. It was with the greatest difficulty that the horses maintained their balance on the swampy ground. The vapor of sweat enveloped their skin. Their knees trembled and at any moment they would have to rest. The coachman scolded and urged them on. He then raised his whip on the unfortunate creatures. The rabbi grabbed him by the elbow and cried out, "This is cruelty to animals, cruelty to animals." The coachman answered in fury, "What do you want me to do? Do you want us to celebrate the Sabbath here?" "What of it?" replied the rabbi. "It is better that we celebrate the Sabbath here than cause the death of these animals by suffering. Are they not the creatures of the Lord? See how exhausted they are. They have not the energy to take one more step forward." "But what of the Sabbath? How can Jews observe the Sabbath in the forest?" asked the coachman. "My friend, it does not matter. The Sabbath Queen will come to us here also, for her glory fills the whole world, and particularly in those places where Jews yearn for her. The Lord shall do what is good in his eyes. He will look after us, supply us with our wants, and guard us against all evil." 63. As the following dialogue indicates, the African king Keziah was astounded when he observed the cruel and unjust way in which Alexander of Macedonia judged disputes, and wondered why Macedonia was still blessed with God's beneficence. 32 Judaism and Vegetarianism. King: Does the rain fall in your country? Alexander: Yes. King: Does the sun shine in your country? Alexander: Yes. King: Perhaps there are small cattle in your country? Alexander: Yes. King: Cursed be the man who would render such evil judgments. It is only because of the merit of the small cattle that the sun shines upon you and the rain falls upon you. For the sake of the small cattle you are saved. 64. The Midrash concluded, hence it is written,